Now, Parliament has approved the budget statement and economic policy of the government for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2024, after a head count of members. The majority had voted 138 votes as against 136 for the minority. Speaker of the Parliament, Alban Sumana at Kingsford, declared the results with the ayes having it. Now, the opposition NDC minority voted 136 against the budget, with one of them being absent from the chamber. Ghana's Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, presented the budget to the Parliament on November 15th this year. To unpack this, I'm joined by Patrick Baah Abankwa, a financial analyst and also investment advisor. Thank you so much for your time, Patrick.
Thank you for having me on this program.
All right, now, why the 2024 budget this divisive amongst politicians in Ghana? Is this still connected to the debt conversation Ghana has been having of late?
I wouldn't say it is directly connected to the debt exchange program that we witnessed from the beginning of the year. I think this particular government, as we say it in Ghana, is a hung parliament, to the point that the difference between the ruling government and the opposition is just one vote. So over the last 4 years or so, whenever it's time for Parliament to approve the budget, there's always some kind of tag between the two parties. So that is clearly what has happened again, and that has even led to the Speaker having to do head count. And if all members of Parliament are present, the assumption is that government will always win or get the budget passed by just a vote. Luckily for them, this time there was one person missing on the side of the minority, which is the NDC, and that led to the passage of the budget for 2024. Of course, you have to look at it in two ways. There's one part, which is the government side, who are trying to raise revenue to be able to bring the fiscal discipline and the shortfall in our revenue to a higher height because of IMF conditionalities. The other side, which is the NDC or the minority, are also pushing because they think that the condition of service in this country, there's high cost of inflation, and increasing taxes leads to more pressure on the Ghanaian. So that has been the banter between the two parties in Parliament over the last 4 years, and I wasn't surprised that this particular budget experienced the same kind of tug of war in Parliament.
Now let's dive into the budget. The government is targeting an increase in Ghana's tax to GDP, that's a gross domestic product ratio, from the current 13% to about 18 to 20%, to be at comparable levels with peer countries. What impact will this have on the economy?
I think if government is able to follow through with this particular initiative of increasing it to the 80 to 20%, for me, it's going to help government generate additional revenue to cover for the shortfall that we have seen over the last 2 years in terms of deficit that the government is not able to finance. Of course, if you are not able to manage this carefully, it will also put some kind of pressure on the businesses in the country. And the negative consequences is that some businesses will have to reduce their consumption, because taxes, of course, leads to people's income or purchasing power reducing. So on the flip side of it, government will be able to raise revenue to cover for shortfall that we always have in our budget. But in terms of the ordinary Ghanaian, the purchasing power of the Ghanaian is going to be reduced over the period of time, and people will now have to look for other means to be able to get revenue to cover for the shortfall of their cost of living and also their living conditions. So that's what is going to happen in the year 2024.
Now, between tax avoidance and tax evasion, which is more prominent in Ghana?
I think statistically, there's no evidence to show that tax avoidance is more or tax evasion is more. I think what we have seen over the period is the fact that in some sectors, some players in the sector try to go for tax avoidance. In other sectors, people try to conceal the availability of their assets to be taxed. So that has been the conditions over the last 20 years or so in our economy. I think what governments have tried to do over the period is to make punishment for tax avoidance and evasion quite stringent. to the point that if a business is caught under any of these brackets, the punishment is very severe, and that is able to deter people from complying or trying to dodge around the tax system in the country. The next thing we need to also put our minds to is that when taxes are not seen as yielding the desired result, that's when people decide to go for either avoidance or trying to evade the tax in the system.
Now, of course, before I let you go, just quickly in less than 30 seconds, if you may, another provision is meant to, of course, to provide import duty exemptions to local manufacturers that import raw materials to produce sanitary, pads and of course, to help them boost the local economy. What is your take on some of these initiatives and policies to boost the local market?
This is a particular initiative that I support. And I think that the government is able to follow through to its implementation. It's going to help boost the local market. Of course, when you look at the Ghanaian economy, we are predominantly the small-scale and medium-scale enterprises that is holding the economy. And if these companies or sectors are competing with bigger multinational companies and they are not giving any support by way of tax exemptions, these companies will not be able to expand and compete with international companies. So if we have, for example, sanitary pad import produce are being exempted from tax, it will help that particular sector. And I'm looking at a time where we expand it beyond just one particular sector to affect every other sector that we have locally produced manufacturers in these sectors. And that's the only way Ghana will be able to come out of the challenges that we are facing. Because you look at our division of the city, is because of we are importing. You look at even exchange rate, it's because of importation. Once you're able to support the local industry, then they become stronger, it creates more jobs, and government will also be able to get more revenue by way of taxes. And for me, that is the way to go if you want to really boost our economy as a Ghanaian economy, as we always say.
Patrick Baah Abankwa, financial analyst and also investment advisor. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Tuesday.